Hey, good Friday morning, DawgNation. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Marco's Pizza. Hope you're getting ready for a great weekend. I imagine a lot of you are like me, looking forward to a little break from football. Now I'll still end up watching a lot of these other SEC games, but kind of nice to be at home here for a couple days. Hope you got some great plans. Get ready to enjoy that. Before all that starts, though, we do have an important day to take care of here. A lot of fun stuff to sort of set the stage for next Saturday's cocktail party, so we'll make good use of your time here. That includes Jeff Sintel a little bit later on. We'll talk some UGA recruiting with him. We'll actually hear from some of the interview that Jeff recently did with five-star running back John Emery Jr. So it is a busy show for us. It's all on the way next as DawgNation Daily, presented by Marco's Pizza, begins right now.
From DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Marco's Pizza. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
All right, never too early to start looking into the cocktail party. That's what we're going to do today on the show. Georgia, Florida next Saturday. Cannot wait for that. And, you know, when we think about what's going to go down there, it's kind of funny to think that quarterback Jake Fromm, once again kind of in the crosshairs here after being very much in that same scenario a year ago. And I think to a certain extent what worked for Georgia the last time against Florida probably also works here this year as well. Do you remember the stage a year ago? Florida, who seems to always be good for a little trash talk before the game, I have no doubt there'll be some of that again next week as well. But Florida, who's always seemingly good for some of that kind of stuff, we got that last year from Chauncey Gardner, who, when speaking about Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm, had some, depending on how you take these words, and there's really probably only one way to take them, but for the most part, Gardner had some disparaging words about Fromm. As a reminder of what he said then, let you hear some audio from about a year ago. Here's the Florida defensive back, Chauncey Gardner.
I mean, he said he has a great quarterback. I mean, I get it. He's throwing simple passes. I get it. Anybody can throw a slant. I get it. But, I mean, like I said, we're just playing football. If he's one of the best quarterbacks, like I said, so be it. But he has to play Saturday. We're going to see what his best attribute is. If he can beat us with his arm, whoop-de-doo. But like, we're not focused on what he can do, what he can't do. We're just going to go out there and focus on us and just play football. We've been doing, like I said, the past 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, so listen, when Gardner said that a year ago, certainly Georgia fans rallied around that. That galvanized the fan base. I think the team kind of did as well. Do you remember late in the game when on a slant pass, DeAndre Swift caught it and leveled Chauncey Gardner? There was a pretty big roar there from the folks still in the Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville. And after the game, part of the fun that Georgia fans had, I think, was at Chauncey Gardner's expense. Well, for the most part, what worked a year ago for Georgia in the game against Florida, I would suggest, can kind of work again here this year as well. And for Jake Fromm, who admittedly needs a good game again after not playing so well against LSU this past Saturday, maybe the words there from Chauncey Gardner can once again be a motivating force here. And Jake Fromm, who has been such a big part of Georgia's success going back to 2017, the Florida game a year ago included, maybe the Gardner words here will once again light a fire that Georgia needs, and the offense can really get going. Because, as we said, there's really no other way to look at the situation with Jake Fromm other than it needs to be better than it has been. And I thought that there was one Twitter feed in particular that probably did a pretty good job of zeroing in exactly where Jake Fromm needs improvement the most right now. It's finding that dependable deep throw target and making some big throws deep down the field. I want to show you a couple things here from CFB Film Room, a really good Twitter account that from time to time they're a little bit like Pro Football Focus, to be honest with you. They've got some statistical breakdowns. Once again, they don't show their work, so I don't know where they get this data. We're going to have to take them at their word on this the same way we do with Pro Football Focus and some of these other accounts here. But they zeroed in on the differences between Fromm in 2017 and Fromm in 2018, and really it's those deep throws that are the issue. Let me show you the first of these tweets here from Pro Football Focus. So let's compare Fromm of the last 2 seasons. It says, on adjusted completion percentage, this is a completion percentage that takes away throwaways and drops. Fromm's at 68.1% last year, at 71.6% this year. He's actually better in that regard in 2018. His completion percentage under pressure is virtually the same. He was at 55.3 a year ago. He's at 53.6% adjusted completion percentage when facing pass pressure this year. That's not a bad number at all when you think about facing a rush. But on throws 20 or more yards down the field, this is where the numbers go down. He was 48% a year ago, which is a very good number, but just 32% right now. That's a number that needs to improve. Adjusted yards per attempt, he's actually a little better this year than last year at 9.7 adjusted yards per attempt. So when you see that number, you say, by no means is Jake Fromm a bad quarterback. Those numbers speak for themselves. And yet when it comes to being a quarterback capable of leading Georgia to a national championship, you do need that extra dimension of those deep throws. And last year, as CFB Film Room points out, the guy that Georgia leaned on a lot for those deep receptions down the field is no longer here in 2018. It was Javon Wims a year ago, but it's not really anybody stepping up in the full-time role in that spot in 2018. Let me show you one more tweet here from CFB Film Room on that. What they write on Twitter is that 7 games into the post-Javon Wims era at Georgia, Jake Fromm still has more than twice as many deep completions to Wims as any other receiver that he's played with. The graphic that CFB Film Room gives us is, on 19 targets deep down the field, Wims caught 11 of them. No other player that's played with Fromm has more than 5 here. That's a problem when you think about the fact that Georgia's trying to establish that dimension of its offense in 2018. The point I think we're making here is, going back to what Chauncey Gardner said a year ago, if there was any game in which Jake Fromm would look to get healthy and look to do better, there's no better candidate for that than the Florida game, given the fact that Florida's the one that kind of doubted and took some jabs at Fromm a year ago. But no way around the overall point here. The way that Jake Fromm played last Saturday against LSU is not going to be good enough for Georgia to achieve the team goals that it has this season. And Kirby Smart, while he hasn't always said everything that some of y'all want him to say when it comes to the quarterback position, has been very clear on this, that the QB position indeed has got to be better. He said that Saturday after the game that he needs to see more from Fromm than he saw against the Tigers. Here's Kirby.
All the struggles weren't his. There's some of those. He made some third down throws that I thought were really good. And there's some couple times he ends up getting a sack that he's got to make a decision to get rid of the ball, but we don't run the right route on one of them. He's looking for a route, and they don't run that route. There's miscommunication between them. So it's easy to sit back and second guess and say this and that, but at the end of the day, we got to make good decisions, and we got to play the guy who gets the best chance to win, and we'll continue to do that. Both those guys are going to continue to get better. They're good football players.
So obviously the both that he's referencing there is also Justin Fields, which has been a hot topic of conversation this week. But on the subject of Fromm, Kirby's pretty clear there. Maybe the overall performance wasn't as bad as some people might have thought, but still there is improvement needed. That theme Kirby Smart stuck with as well when he spoke to the media again on Tuesday. Once again reiterating there's more that he needs to see from his quarterback. Here's Kirby again.
There were some things he could have done better, most certainly. Some protection breakdowns. A couple times we've had guys wide open that he couldn't get the ball out because we ended up getting sacked. We had poor protection on 2 of them. A couple of them he missed. He missed Miko early, he'll tell you that. And he's got to do a good job for us. He's got to play better. And he did some things right, too. He did some good and bad.
So listen, obviously Kirby Smart's weighing in on that, saying there's some things I want to see more from Jake Fromm than what I've seen thus far. I think it's comforting to know that Kirby Smart's holding him to the standard that Fromm played to a year ago. And as we keep saying here, Florida may be the perfect chance for that light to come on once again, because there was some trash talk from the Gators side here a week ago. It may also be comforting for some Georgia fans to also realize that while Fromm's performance and maybe lack of success against LSU has been in a bit of a national spotlight here, there are some members of the so-called national media who have by no means changed their opinion about Fromm. I'll take you back to yesterday's program. Maybe you heard this, maybe you missed it, but CBS Sports' Barrett Sallee joined us. And on the subject of Jake Fromm, it seems like that Barrett's nowhere near ready to write off Fromm just on the basis of the bad game against LSU. It sounds like Barrett thinks that when it's all said and done, that Fromm will once again prove to be the right quarterback for Georgia. Here is Barrett Sallee on that point.
Yeah, there's no reason to call for a switch right now. I mean, it's one bad game. I understand the frustration. It's one bad game. He's allowed to have a bad game. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to see it. You don't want that game to cost you anything. But, you need to figure out a way to prevent it from happening again.
So that's seemingly what the subject of Georgia practice has been this week, figuring out that way to see that this doesn't happen again. I mean, the overall bottom line is that, Fromm does need a better game. Georgia needs a better game from its quarterback if it wants to stay on pace to potentially compete for an SEC championship, a national championship, spots in the college football playoff. Georgia needs more from the quarterback, and Jake Fromm may indeed prove to be the guy to give that to UGA. And maybe the stuff that Chauncey Gardner said a year ago that seemed to ignite Georgia fans last year, maybe that same kind of stuff can ignite Georgia again this year as well. we are still more than a week away from the cocktail party, but it's not too early to start thinking about Georgia versus Florida and seeing how Jake Fromm might be able to make Chauncey Gardner look foolish once again. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Marco's Pizza. Hello to you. Glad to have you with us, no matter how you get to us today. Live on video, 10 a.m., DawgNation Facebook, YouTube, Twitter feed, radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Rep, and in podcast form wherever podcasts can be found, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. We are just glad that you have found a DawgNation Daily here today. Great show coming up. We'll have Jeff Sintel here in just a couple of minutes. We'll do some recruiting talk with him. I also want Jeff to weigh in on another subject related to what we're just talking about with Jake Fromm and the issue with that deep threat wide receiver. Who is that guy that's likely to emerge here over the course of the rest of the season? We'll let Jeff Sintel weigh in on that coming up in a couple of moments. Before that, let me remind you that our program is always brought to you by our friends at Marco's Pizza. This weekend, great weekend to be able to say hello, Primo, as you're sitting around watching some of these other college football games with the dogs off. Say hello, Primo, with a great offer. 2 medium, 2 topping pizzas for just $6.99 each. It's every store, every day, the Italian way. Go to Marcos.com. You can find the Marcos nearest you, and you can take advantage of this great offer, and we'll certainly appreciate you doing that on our behalf there. All right, before we get Jeff Sintel, I actually want to do something I almost never do. You know, I try to think about these beginnings of the show as 2 different parts of the beginning, and I almost never do the same thing in the second part that I did in the first part, but it's kind of funny. I want to talk more about Florida here for a moment. I want to do so using a couple of the same pieces of evidence that I just used a moment ago, which is a tweet from CFB Film Room and some audio from Barrett Sleep. Because when Barrett was on the show yesterday, he said something kind of interesting as well about the Florida quarterback Felipe Franks. And let me set it up this way. And if you watched DN90 yesterday, you saw some of this brought to you by Dixie Vodka. But I think this is important to bring to the DawgNation Daily audience here as well, that the method by which Georgia is likely to beat Florida next Saturday is becoming abundantly clear here. Let me go back. For those of you that are watching on video, you'll be able to see this. If you're listening, either radio or podcast, I will read this to you. But CFB Film Room, much the same way they broke down some of Jake Fromm stuff, also broke down some stuff on the other quarterback next Saturday, Felipe Franks from Florida, here as well. And you see a staggering level of inefficiency on any throw from Felipe Franks. It's more than 9 yards down the field. Behind the line of scrimmage thus far this year, Franks is 30 of 33, nearly 91% completion percentage. On throws 0 to 9 yards down the field, he's completing 63.1% of his passes on 65 attempts. But look at this. On anything beyond that, intermediate throws, 10 to 19 yards down the field, Felipe Franks just 21 of 45 for a 46.7% completion percentage, and he's completing just 35.5% of his passes 20 or more yards down the field. Felipe Franks is not yet becoming not even a great quarterback. He's not even a very good quarterback right now. And when you look at the recipe by which Georgia will beat Florida next week, I don't think it could be more clear. You've got to make that game from a defensive standpoint about Felipe Franks throwing the football. The more you put the ball in his hand with the game on the line, the more likely it would seem, based on those stats, that Georgia's going to walk out of Jacksonville a winner over the Florida Gators. We've echoed that sentiment a lot here on DawgNation Daily over the last few weeks. It's kind of interesting to see the numbers back that up, despite the fact that Florida's been winning some games. Furthermore, when Barrett Sleep from CBS Sports was with us yesterday, he also seemed to agree with those stats. Our opinion that as of right now, Franks is still very much a work in progress as a quarterback. Here's Barrett.
Felipe Franks can't throw. And Florida's offense, even though they've played well and they've strung a few upsets and are, in the top 15, it's not been because of the offense. It's been in spite of the offense, which is more or less Will Muschamp's, deal at Florida, and more or less Jim McElwain's deal at Florida. So Georgia has no issues with that.
Yeah, so Georgia's not going to have any issues with Felipe Franks throwing the football, according to Barrett Sleep, which is possibly good news. But the other thing to consider, though, here is that is going to then put more pressure on a Georgia defensive unit that Kirby Smart's been very open about needing to see improvement from as well. Georgia gave up too many rushing yards to LSU a week ago, was even guilty of doing the same thing against Missouri and against Vanderbilt. This is an area in which Georgia has not been perfect thus far this season. So there's more pressure on the Georgia rush defense against Florida, and Jordan Scarlett and LaMichael P. Ryan, guys like that, have had an okay year, but all the more reason for that group to get better. Maybe it is, as we've been saying, some of the freshmen who step in and sort of fill some of those gaps and fill some of those holes. But one way or another, if Georgia can lock down its rush defense and make the game be about Felipe Franks doing the football, that could be a recipe for victory. We'll obviously talk a lot more about that next week. Before we move on here on this Friday, though, don't forget on the program each and every Friday, we do our Kroger checklist, looking to some of the things happening around DawgNation. There are a couple of things I want you to be mindful of right now. First of all, as we check out our Kroger checklist here, first of all, don't forget that next Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, it is Georgia versus Florida. They're on CBS on the television. On the radio side, you can hear that on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB. Cocktail party there. It's a customary time. Also, you got a men's basketball exhibition next week as well. Actually, this will be, I guess, into the following week. On November 1st. Georgia had another exhibition last night, the first of the season, against UAB. They came away a victor there in Birmingham. Mike Griffith's got some great coverage for you on that at DawgNation.com, so make sure you check that out as the basketball season gets ready to get rolling. And Tom Crean tries to bring a new brand of Georgia basketball here to the mix in Athens. We'll look forward to hearing and seeing a whole lot more about that. Let me also say this, that our Kroger checklist every Friday is brought to you by our friends at Kroger. Don't forget to check out Kroger Ship, a great new program that's going to deliver the stuff that you need right there to your door. And right now, if you act now to sign up, they've even got some special savings, including free shipping on your first order. So you can get 15% off. You can get free shipping on your first order. Make sure you check out Kroger Ship. And here on DawgNation Daily, of course, on Fridays, you know to check out Jeff Sintel as well with some info on UGA recruiting and a whole lot of fun. Let's check in with him right now.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Say hello to Jeff Sintel here on this Friday. And, Jeff, I no doubt hope you've got a big weekend planned. Hopefully it won't involve recruits quite as much. Maybe it'll involve some of your family and friends a little bit more here. But I hope you're getting ready to enjoy a nice off Saturday here coming up this weekend, Jeff. All right, we will get Jeff figured out and taken care of there. Sounds like he's moving, but we'll get him taken care of in just a minute, and we'll get rolling with him here on a DawgNation Daily here today. Jeff, are you with us? All right, right now it doesn't seem like either Jeff can hear me. We can certainly hear him, but we'll get some of that coming up here in just a minute. There are a couple things I want to talk to Jeff about. Unfortunately, it looks like another member of Georgia's 2019 recruiting class has dealt with an injury here. There is some news on that. We want Jeff to kind of clear up for us a little bit. There's also a new name emerging here in terms of a pretty hot priority on, seemingly anyway, for Georgia along the offensive line here in 2019. Some of the names we've talked about, whether guys that are already committed to the program or guys that that are targets like Clay Webb. It seems like there's a new name popping up there. We'll let Jeff kind of clear up that just a little bit, and we'll give Jeff a chance to talk a little bit about the great interview he had with the five-star running back John Emery Jr. So we'll do a lot of that with Jeff Sintel coming up here. While we're waiting to get Jeff squared away here on the phone, let me take a moment to get a couple comments here too, just to give you a chance to sound off. Of course, we'll try to do some of that a little later as well. I do have to get off the air here pretty close to on time today, but nonetheless, we'll look forward to doing some of that here in just a moment. Let me pull up some comments. We'll get rolling on those here on this Friday. Jason Troutman on the subject of stopping that run. Yeah, listen, that's something that Georgia's got to be able to do coming up on Saturday. There's no doubt about that. Keith Finney says, when will Big Ben be back? It sounds like, Keith, that certainly he's on his way to making a good recovery here for Georgia, but it also sounds like I'd be very surprised if that happens against Florida here. And I don't think you can overstate what losing Cleveland has done to Georgia overall. And I think that we talked about this in the show just a little bit yesterday as well, that the scenario with Georgia and how talented it is this year, and is it more talented than last year's team or less talented? I mean, one of the things I do think you have to speak to the positive about Georgia on is that it played part of the season, at least a brief window of the season, without Andrew Thomas, an All-American level left tackle, and without Ben Cleveland right now at right guard for a stretch of weeks here. And Cleveland's a former five-star prospect, and by all indications, a rock-solid starter here. So, the fact that Georgia has done what it's been able to do, even if the offense hasn't been perfect, the fact that it's done what it's been able to do with these significant injuries, a guy like Cade Mays being able to step in both roles, probably not a 10 out of 10 performance for him at left tackle, but he was solid. I think his work here at the guard position has also been pretty solid as well. I mean, I think that does speak to what Georgia's been able to do. And absent Ben Cleveland, I think Georgia's done a pretty good job replacing him, but pretty clearly the Georgia offense is better when he's there. It sounds like we do have Jeff Sintel ready to go here. Jeff, can you hear me? Are you with us, sir?
Brandon, hey, man, I'm here, man. When is it time to load up that van with hair gel and veggie pizza and go down to Jacksonville with your pro wrestling magazine, sir?
Yeah, listen, that was a great experience last year, and we're looking forward to doing more of that this year. I cannot wait for the cocktail party, and I hope that you're getting ready. Before we get to that, I hope you're getting ready to take a little downtime and enjoy some time with the family before you get there. You know, these bye weeks, as much as we love the Saturdays during the season, these bye weeks can be pretty sacred as well, right?
Yeah, but, you know, Brandon, the world of college football recruiting never sleeps. So with me, you know, lots of Georgia coaches are out on the road this weekend recruiting, checking up on guys, checking up on targets. So that means, you know, Friday night I'll probably be busy, and Saturday I might even have some stories up on the website as well.
Well, listen, that's what we've come to expect from you, Jeff. No rest for the weary when it comes to that. We certainly appreciate that. Hey, I got a lot of recruiting stuff I want to talk to you about, but before we get more into that, including some of it I guess may be bad news, before we get into some of that, let me let you piggyback off of a topic I was addressing before you came on the show. The one area in particular where it seems obvious that Jake Fromm needs the most improvement, the overall stats for Fromm look actually pretty good this year, comparable to last year, if not a little bit better. But the one thing that he's not doing as well right now are on those deep throws, 20 or more yards down the field. Last year used Javon Wims a lot for that. This year, that receiver hasn't necessarily emerged. Now, part of that's also on Fromm. He misfired or simply just missed an open receiver a week ago against LSU. But in terms of the guy that may fill that Javon Wims role and what we hope is still about a half of a season left to come for Georgia here, who do you think that guy is right now?
Wow, that's a great question. I think Georgia's searching for that guy as well. I mean, you know, to me, Brandon, I think and I find myself saying this to fans and neighbors and just everybody a lot, I think the biggest difference in Jake Fromm is Jake has had to go from the guy that was maybe the fourth or fifth best or most productive resource on the offense last year to where now you look at him and, you know, he's got to get it done at a high level. He's got to get it done as any bulldog on that offense, and maybe they're leaning on Jake to make plays more than they did. You know, years past, last year, he could count on a great block from Isaiah Wynn. Andrew Thomas was more than solid over on the right side. And then he had a security blanket like Javon Wims to throw the ball to when he was in a spot. And also he had the run threat of Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, who were always there. And, you know, at best, if you're being kind, you can say that Georgia's run game flashes maybe close to that level, but they haven't been that level before. So you think about that. You know, who else on the offense is asked to take on a greater role than Jake Fromm right now? Doesn't look like that to me at all a lot. Maybe it was Mecole Hardman in the early going. But, I mean, the biggest triage for a lot of his worries would be a steady diet of run game and get him away from those 3rd and 9s. The other big thing, Brandon, is like when Georgia faces an Alabama, an Auburn, or an LSU, some of those schools with comparable elevated talent on defense, they don't have a lot of guys that's going to beat press coverage and get open except for one name. I think the one guy, when you sort everything out and you say what must be said, I think Riley Ridley needs to be that guy because he was that guy against Alabama in the national championship game, and you saw flashes of him against LSU. They need Riley Ridley to be a 6-catch, 95-yard guy for the rest of the season here on in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jeff, and I almost completely agree with you with about all of that. Let me change the subject to recruiting, and I guess this is not great news. Let me show our video audience a tweet, and I want you to respond to it. This comes from someone who apparently knows the Georgia committed tight end, Rylan Goede. Caleb Carmen coming in to say prayers up for the guy, Rylan Goede, as he heads in for surgery tomorrow morning. This was from October 17th. You'll kind of come out stronger on the other side. So Kennesaw Mountain tagged in some of that kind of stuff there. So is Goede now another member of the 2019 class, Jeff, that's now dealing with an injury, much like Ryan Trouble Davis? Georgia had a lot of this last year with Zamir White and Justin Fields and Azeez Ojulari. Is this another UGA commit now dealing with a what sounds like a pretty significant injury here?
Yeah, Brandon, we wrote about this on the site yesterday, and it's you know, you start thinking off the names, and that was one of my initial points of the story. You got Owen Condon, Harris Jackson, Justin Fields, Zamir White. You've got Ryan Trouble Davis. You've got now Rylan Goody. These are Bulldogs. They're not all knee injuries, but these are Bulldogs that have suffered season-ending injuries in their senior year of high school football. Goody had a approximate injury. He was going up for a jump ball. He came down the wrong way. He told me it was the most excruciating pain he had ever felt. He knew right away his knee was jacked up. And maybe the bright side of this is, you know, Goody, who is a great 78, 79 golfer, can mash a baseball probably 400 feet with the best of them. He's going to play baseball at Georgia, but he's decided now with the injury he's going to be on the shelf, that now he's going to enroll early at Georgia. He's going to forego his spring sports at Kennesaw Mountain. That means he gets his rehab done under the watchful care of Ron Corson. The surgery was actually yesterday. It was performed by Dr. Robert Hancock, who is basically the team orthopedist for Georgia, the five-star knee surgeon, we might even say. And one thing that the Goody family told me coming out of that injury is that the way Kirby Smart and the Georgia staff stepped up and took care of Ryland immediately after that injury in terms of helping them through this difficult spot, everything else. Chris Goody, Ryland's father, told me that the Georgia program exceeded their every expectation about how a program should take care of a committed player in the event of an injury like this.
Boy, that's great to hear that behind the scenes, the Georgia coaching staff are really stepping up to help a young man like that. That's a very encouraging sign, I think, for a lot of DawgNation. Now, transitioning to a happier subject here, one of Goody's good friends, five-star wide receiver Dominic Blaylock. I guess he's going to get some more media attention here tonight. I believe it's Walton against Roswell here. Another pretty good showcase for Blaylock. I think this game's on public television. I don't know if that's streaming video or over-the-air broadcast TV. To be honest with you, I don't know. But a little bit more media attention for another pretty good opponent there for a Blaylock. He showed out against North Gwinnett earlier in the season. You know, it has been featured here on TV a couple times this year. Kind of exciting to think about. A little bit more chance to see a full game opportunity from Blaylock thus far this season. When he's been featured, he has not disappointed, right?
Blaylock is maybe, with the exception of Tresban Marshall, the most underappreciated commitment in the Georgia board. And maybe when you talk about five-star commitments, I mean, let's face it, Dominic Blaylock should probably be the crown jewel in a lot of top 10 teams recruiting for the class of 2019. And Blaylock with names like John Emery and obviously names like John Emery, then you've got Nolan Smith, the dearly departed. Hopefully fans want to see Jaden Hazelwood back into the fold. You know, there's a lot of guys in Georgia's class. They had five stars at one point with Trayvon Walker. He kind of sort of always gets, you know, overshadowed or underrepresented, and I think that's basically because of, number one, he's just been so steadfast. And for that old school DawgNation content consumer that's like, I'm going to be happy when they commit. I want them to be committed to the program. No one, even Brandon Adams Jr., Brandon Adams could not autopilot a recruiting that is more steadfast, that is more lead pipe lock, that is more titanium than the one from Dominic Blaylock to Georgia. He doesn't take visits. He doesn't talk to other coaches. I don't even think he could put on a purple sweatshirt or a Crimson sweatshirt without his skin boiling.
Listen, that's one of the reasons why Georgia fans like Blaylock so much. And when he's featured in these games of the week type things the way he has a couple times this season, it's one of the reasons why Georgia fans have a really good time with that. Speaking of having a really good time with Georgia fans, this upcoming week, another great chance to do that as part of our Marlowe's Big Game Preview. We're back at the Dunwoody location coming up Wednesday at 6 p.m. This may be our biggest of the season, at least our biggest thus far, because on Wednesday, in addition to everything else you've come to expect from DawgNation, we're also welcoming a special guest. Former Georgia quarterback David Green going to be on hand, answering questions from the audience, signing some autographs, posing for pictures. David is a great storyteller at events like this, and he's going to be with us at the Marlowe's in Dunwoody coming up this Wednesday. It's October 24th. Marlowe's in Dunwoody is 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway. So please check that out. 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway in Dunwoody for the Marlowe's in Dunwoody on Wednesday for our DawgNation Big Game Preview with all the happy faces from DawgNation. along with the former quarterback David Green. I know you're going to want to be a part of that. All right, Jeff, getting back to recruiting here just for a moment, let me try to play catch-up on a subject that you and I on this program probably haven't talked about enough. We did discuss it on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger this past week, but maybe our first time discussing this on DawgNation Daily, and that's what's going on with the big 4-star offensive lineman Trevor Keegan from Illinois. It seems like he and Georgia are becoming fast friends here, and I guess figuring out how Keegan fits into the rest of the picture for Georgia can be a little bit, I don't want to say confusing necessarily, but it's not easily understood right at first, blush. Is this a true offensive tackle here? Is this the kind of guy that would maybe jump into a spot here if there was some attrition or movement with some of the other guys Georgia already has committed? What can you tell us to kind of bring us all up to speed on what's going on with Keegan out of Illinois?
Yeah, there's a lot of connect the dots here. So first of all, you don't need to have a daily recruiting blog every day to figure out that Sam Pittman likes offensive linemen and he likes big offensive linemen. Interesting watching Georgia's 70-man travel roster of late because that's where Owen Condon went from playing his first game as a Bulldog in the Vanderbilt game. So then the next following week at LSU, he makes the travel roster for the game as well. And when you look at it, and when you look at Georgia's roster and depth chart critically, they don't have a lot of tackles, especially 6'6", 325-pound guys like the state's number one prospect from Illinois in Keegan. You look at Georgia tackles, it seems like DeMarcus Hayes. He's already been passed up by Owen Condon. So when you look at tackles Georgia has, there's Andrew Thomas. There's Isaiah Wilson, of course. There's Cade Mays. Now, who's the fourth tackle in the program? Right now, it looks like that guy is going to be Owen Condon for the back half of the season in a stopgap situation. Remember, he's got 4 games to play to hold on to his red shirt. The other thing you think about when you see Georgia and what they have so far is they have Warren McClendon, who Georgia has certified as a tackle, but he could also play the guard spot. They have Xavier Truss, the big Adidas All-American from Rhode Island. I think you got a guy like Keegan who has Georgia in his top 5, along with schools like Ohio State, Clemson. If you look at his Instagram, it's not just a little love lately. He's really been feeling Georgia for a lot. There's a good connection there. And so many people on our message board, the DawgNation forum, get in there if you're not already. They always speculate the next guy to commit to the G, the next guy to commit to the Georgia football program. And Keegan's name will come up quite a lot. He's a guy that I think Georgia, another thing this Jeff guy tends to say a lot, it may be cold-blooded, it may be calculating, but the one thing you can count on is Georgia will get the best 24, 25 players it possibly can for the 2019 recruiting class. And you start looking at pieces, the remaining pieces of the offensive line, there's really Keegan and there's really Clay Webb, the 5-star offensive guard is what I'm going to call him, because that's where he wants to play, and that's where he might immediately fit should he choose the Bulldogs. Those are basically the only targets left on the board, and a closing kick for this class that, to me, looks like it will be very defensive back-heavy, along with another name we don't talk about a lot, at least on this program, Nick Cross. That's the safety.
Okay.
He's out of the Mid-Atlantic region. He's currently a Florida State commit, but there's a lot of chatter. There's also a lot of communication going on right now between Nick Cross and Georgia. Obviously, Florida State isn't having the best of seasons. Obviously, Georgia's going to look to add some more to the safety spot, even with the addition of number 3 rated overall safety Lewis Seen in the class of 2019. That's another name. We put up our top targets list every week on Before the Hedges on Wednesdays, sponsored by Kroger, and Keegan's a name in there, and Nick Cross is another name that might creep up onto that list as time goes by.
Let me try to do a couple quick issues here before we let you go, and I'm going to go ahead and warn you, Jeff, you're going to hate this question. I'm going to ask it to you anyway. There has obviously been a lot of intense conversation about quarterbacks this week, and I think the future for these guys in the Georgia roster as it stands right now is probably still very uncertain, which makes you think, we know that Georgia's recently extended an offer to an additional quarterback beyond John Rice Plumlee, who it currently has a commitment from. Is there any chance that Georgia would look to get back involved with a bigger name in the 2019 class? Obviously, what comes to mind here is Ryan Helinski, who recently got his Stanford offer here. I mean, is there any chance that Georgia's going to get back involved with a bigger name at some point?
I mean, I know everyone would like that for the quarterback board, but I just don't see, Brandon, that sort of streak of Eason to Fromm to Fields extending another year. I think Georgia does need another quarterback in this class just for having arms and bodies and doing something besides bringing a third-string quarterback that's a preferred walk-on on the road to LSU in a huge intra-divisional conference game. Plumlee's looking very good right now as a junior. I mean, as a senior right now. What he's done is he's got 18 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's got about 700 yards rushing, another 10 scores on the ground. I actually saw him in the stands as a pure fan coming to catch Georgia LSU last weekend.
That's nice.
But do they need another quarterback? What probably happens there is, they've got to just fill out the quarterback shelf. And I think, to me, who's going to play? I think if you're a 2019 quarterback, you see everything that's settled in, and they're like, it's either going to be Fromm or it's either going to be Fields long term. I think the biggest attraction for Georgia, besides finding like a 3-star, low 4-star type in 2019, is to really set its sights on 2020, doubling up again in the 2020 class as well. Because, it's funny, everybody wants to talk about the quarterback situation, Brandon. The only thing I can see, the only change I can see is change is likely inevitable. Something's going to change with the way those guys are rotating right now. And when you mentioned David Green as our guest next week in Marlowe's, the thing that comes to my mind is maybe the most immediate stopgap to see what everybody can do in this Georgia offense to finish out the click to own the East is maybe what David Green and DJ Shockley went through. And that's where the 4th series belongs to Fields, the 7th series belongs to Fields, something like that. Because remember, David Green and DJ Shockley's names continue to come up because that was the last time the program balanced 2 very diverse skill sets at quarterback. And before the game, everybody knew exactly what was going to happen. At least those 2 guys did going into the football game.
That's a really provocative line of thought, Jeff. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me finish with this, and I want you to take this anywhere you want to go, but you had a great interview with John Emery Jr. We saw some of that on Before the Hedges on Wednesday. We've gotten a chance to read some of that at the Centel Intel this week at DawgNation.com. There is one thing I'm curious about. We always talk about how Jaden Hazelwood, the wide receiver, looks at it when Georgia doesn't throw the ball. What do you think Emery thought about Georgia not running the ball enough against LSU on Saturday? And then beyond that, just your overall thoughts on getting a chance to spend some extended time with Emery in Louisiana last week.
Well, there are going to be a lot of stories about this, about Emery and his family and all that stuff on DawgNation that are going to be coming up soon. And the one thing I just see is this is a guy that doesn't like to be recruited, Brandon. He doesn't need to talk to coaches on the phone. He doesn't need to. One thing he did after he committed to Georgia is he told Dell McGee and the staff, he's like, man, I don't need any more of that recruiting talk. I'm good. I just need to, real talk, conversational talk, relationship talk. Probably one of the big things I picked up, and, everybody likes to speculate in those clicky headlines about, will John Emery visit Alabama? Will John Emery visit LSU? Will he visit Florida? That family, because they're in a team that's trying to win big things and big rings in Louisiana, that family is drained by having a game on Friday and then flying somewhere or driving somewhere, then to get recruited, which is what John Emery doesn't really like either, to get that heavy, hard pitch over a weekend. It's draining. They don't really think they like it. They don't really think they need it. And another little side story, Brandon, is I think John Emery Sr., even though he once played at Tennessee, he's starting to catch up with you on the amount of Georgia's shirt and Georgia gear that he wears out in public, man. And I know you probably, people say, don't watch what the recruits wear, don't watch their gloves, don't watch their gear. You could probably watch the family's gear a little bit stronger, than the latter right there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jeff. I don't quite know the science behind this, but the gear the parents wear may be more indicative than the gear the kids wear from time to time. You may be right about that. One way or another, we appreciate you being here on DawgNation Daily here today. Sounds like you've got some great stuff coming here over the course of the weekend from parts unknown around the recruiting trail. We certainly appreciate that. We'll look forward to reading every word. You know we will. And then when we'll talk to you next week, Jeff, it will be cocktail party week. The Gator Hater Countdown will be very, very deep into the single digits as we head towards Jacksonville next Saturday. Thanks for your time, Jeff.
Hey, man, it's Blind Squirrel Week. Look forward to it.
I appreciate that.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Blind Squirrel Week indeed. Now, for those of you that listen to the show, you don't ever get to see the fact that we have Eddie, our unofficial DawgNation mascot, who is on the set with us every single day. We'll explain to you at some point in time again for the sort of newcomers to the program how Eddie became such a fixture on the program here. And some people on the forum this week at forum.dawgnation.com are asking, is Eddie coming to Jacksonville? Is he going to come to the cocktail party? We're going to make an announcement really soon about everything that's going to be happening next week, and my hope is in some form or fashion there will be some sort of Eddie sighting at some point in time, but I'm not ready to unveil all that right now, so stick with us. We'll try to tell you more about that as we get close. We got to work at Eddie's contract here. You got to realize he's got a very long rider, lots of acorns. He needs lots of those kinds of things to make any kind of public appearance, so we'll see what we can work out there on that. But funny stuff from Jeff Santel. Speaking of Jeff and speaking of John Emery Jr., coming up in a moment, I'm going to let you hear some of the audio with Jeff's interview with Emery. Now, if you want more of it, go to Before the Hedges on any of the DawgNation video channels. You can see the entire thing. And you can go read more about it at DawgNation.com. But just kind of bring you up to speed on some of the Emery stuff, including what Jeff was alluding to there about the UGA gear that Emery's apparently always wearing. We'll let you hear a couple of those things coming up here. Before that, though, let me remind you that when it comes to getting action on some sporting events this weekend, college football, something else, still a chance to get in on some playoff baseball. It's more than just picking winners. You can do over-unders. You can do the parlays where you wager a little bit of money, have a chance to win a lot. The only service we would recommend is our friends at MyBookie. And the reason why is, as we've been telling this for a long time, and the results back it up, MyBookie is known as the no-hassle payout when you win. Because when you do win, there's nothing more important than that. And even better right now, you can be a winner before your first bet's even placed. Use the promo code DawgNation. That's all one word, spelled, of course, the way it's supposed to be. DAWG. When you find MyBookie online, that promo code's going to get your first deposit matched dollar for dollar. But you got to act right now. Find MyBookie online. Just simply type in MyBookie. You can find that online. Use the promo code DawgNation. Your first deposit can be matched dollar for dollar. Then after that, you play, you win, you get paid. It's as simple as that at MyBookie when you use the promo code DawgNation. All right, a couple stories I want to get to here. Auburn is imploding, and Auburn players are now challenging NFL stars to races, I guess. I don't know this is the best use of social media for an Auburn program that is a total mess right now, but I saw Anthony Schwartz, who is an Auburn wide receiver and legitimately a world-class sprinter, and that's not a phrase that I use lightly. Schwartz is a big deal here when it comes to sprinting. He was down there in Florida. He ran against Tyson Campbell, James Cook, all those guys a year ago. Schwartz is a big-time sprinter, but he's now challenged another big-time sprinter in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs' Tyreek Hill, to a race. Here is the tweet that Schwartz kind of put out there on that, saying to Ty Hill, it says, when we racing, and there's a series of emojis, and Ty Hill comes back at him with link up with a peace sign emoji. By the way, how about Ty Hill having @Cheetah as his Twitter handle? For a fast dude, there's no better Twitter handle than that, I guess. I don't know how he got Cheetah as a Twitter handle, but pretty good for him. There's no telling how many people have tried to buy that from him over the years, I would guess. So kind of cool stuff there on that. But if you're an Auburn fan, this kind of sideshow on Twitter while the team is burning to the ground, that may not be the thing that you want most of all. Speaking of Tigers in the SEC West, we talk about LSU for a moment. Now, I'm usually very quick not to put anything on the screen on video that doesn't translate to the audio. This is one moment where I'm going to break that typical standard protocol for our program, because LSU is wearing, and don't say this lightly, maybe about the coolest helmet that I've seen a college team wear on Saturday. They're wearing purple helmets in honor of the 1918 team. I don't completely get all of that necessarily, But these helmets, if I'm understanding this video correctly, these helmets change color when light reflects off of them. They go from purple to reflecting gold. Now, how is it that LSU can get those, but Georgia can't get any true silver breeches? How is the technology for helmets for LSU so much more advanced than the breeches technology for Georgia? I don't quite know that, but I got to tell you, that's a pretty awesome helmet. Now, I still think Mississippi State +7 is a pretty good bet on Saturday night, but the helmets that LSU's wearing legitimately are one of the coolest things you'll ever see. Also, don't forget, third Saturday in October means Tennessee-Alabama. This year's renewal of that rivalry slightly different given the fact that former Alabama defensive coordinator Jeremy Pruitt is on the other side as the Tennessee head coach here. The potential of sign stealing, of knowing what the Alabama sidelines are sending onto the field as a message. Apparently Nick Saban's not all that worried about that. Here's what he said this week via Charlie Potter from the Alabama 24/7 site. The quote from Saban about changing up his hand signals. He says, "That's a problem, but we do try to change them some. But you can disguise things, you can change things. Sometimes when you change things, who are you really fooling?" Now, it's one of those moments where I actually don't take Saban at his word on this. One of the things I'm always fascinated to learn more about behind the scenes is just how paranoid a lot of these coaches are when it comes to sign stealing and things like that. They go to great lengths to prevent this kind of stuff. It sometimes makes you wonder, what do they know about their counterparts on the other side? But nonetheless, I don't take Saban at his word on this. I think he's probably taking very seriously the notion of what Pruitt might be able to glean from the sidelines there. The micromanager Saban, I'm guess he'll micromanage this as well. As I said yesterday, though, during our MyBookie Best Bet segment, I actually like Alabama in a big way on Saturday. I think that Saban's going to be sneakily motivated to beat up on Jeremy Pruitt. I think Alabama covers that number. What is it, about 28, 29 points? I think they cover it in a very easy way on Saturday. That's just a little free reminder for you. By the way, before we move on here, let hear a little bit of John Emery Jr. as we wrap up our SEC through. I mentioned Kroger earlier. Don't forget, we're getting close to Halloween, and this weekend, Kroger's got a great offer for you. Starting today, you can save an extra 50% on Halloween candy and Halloween decorations between now and Sunday at your local Atlanta Kroger. You can also download your digital Kroger coupon on the website to get started with the saving right there. So listen, I know my wife and children who were off from school today for whatever reason. They're always off from school. But nonetheless, they are going to go get a bunch of Halloween candy right now. We got one of these neighborhoods where like 9 million kids come by every single year, so we got to stock up. And with 50% off this weekend, Kroger gives us a good chance to do that. And now, with that said, I do want to play you a little bit of this John Emery Jr. stuff, because I think when you see the full interview that Jeff did, go to Before the Hedges, you can do that, or check out the Centel Intel at DawgNation.com. I think you see a guy in Emery who seems pretty committed to Georgia here. First of all, let me start with this. On the subject of those armbands that Emery always wears, the Georgia-branded armbands, Emery made no bones about the fact that this is not something that he ever takes off. Here's John Emery Jr., the five-star running back with Jeff Centel.
I see a pair of Georgia bands on your wrist. How long do those things stay on? Are they always on? When do you take them off?
I sleep with them. I tuck them in with me and all that. You know, I like them. Red, Bulldogs.
First of all, I would give anything to be as cool and relaxed as John Emery Jr. I mean, y'all watch me on this show every day, or you listen. I'm like this ball of like spastic energy. I'm always bouncing around and always maybe just a little bit too hyper. Like, Emery's like the most relaxed, calm, chill guy in the world. If you woke me up in the middle of the night, I wouldn't be as relaxed as Emery seems right there. I'd give anything to have even a small dose of that that ability just to kind of take it easy and relax. But even in the midst of that, though, you get a sense this is a guy that really much values his relationship with Georgia and still holding steadfast to his Georgia commitment, at least I believe anyway. Here's a little more from Jeff on that visit that Emery just took for the Tennessee game. Once again, you hear the cool, relaxed atmosphere, the nature of Emery, but also some pretty complimentary words for Georgia. Here's more.
Everybody always wonders about the 5 stars and keeping them in the fold. How did you feel at Georgia? And then maybe what are your thoughts on the program right now and your commitment to Georgia?
When I visited, it was, that was like my 5th time up there. Last time I went. It's always I always have a great time up there. You know, everybody, environment, the atmosphere is great. everybody in Athens is just so happy and nice. I mean, it reminds me of New Orleans. You know, I got to relate back to New Orleans. Make sure you hit Burger. And everybody's just nice, man. And then the game, and that was my first game. You know, at Georgia this last week against Tennessee. That was amazing.
So important information there. 5 or so visits to Georgia, but that was the first game he's been to. And as Jeff wrote at DawgNation.com, for a guy that loves his hometown of New Orleans, for him to say, you know what, Athens kind of reminds me of New Orleans, that's a pretty good thing there. I think that speaks well to the relationship that Emery has. And, you know, for those of you watching this on video, you see some of his highlights right now. I mean, this is a guy that it would certainly seem that Georgia really, really needs, a guy that could step in and play a big role in Georgia as soon as 2019. And it sounds like Emery, even though it's a tough recruitment, even though that Louisiana is still a long way away, it sounds like Dell McGee especially is doing a pretty good job leading Georgia in this regard. So really cool stuff. I would invite you to go to DawgNation.com or check out Before the Hedges from this week for more with Jeff, with John Emery Jr. Jeff just does a great job of that kind of stuff, really kind of getting you connected to the guys who could be the next generation of Georgia Star here. I'm always glad to have that kind of content. Jeff really churns it out like nobody else, and I always love that. And when Jeff Sintel was on with us a moment ago, too, he talked about it's hard to believe that we're now just 8 days away from Georgia, Florida. We've been doing this countdown for 364 days, and we're now just 8 days away. And this game, as we've gotten closer to it, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. What a knockdown dragon it's going to be next Saturday between Georgia and Florida. Y'all know around here that we believe that good Georgia fans are Gator haters first and foremost, and next week's a great week to do some Gator hating. But before that, it is an off day on Saturday, so spend some time with your family and friends. Rest up, because we're going to need you at full strength next week. Y'all have a great weekend, everybody. And on video, good to have you with us here on the program here today. I do have to get off at 11 today, though. I apologize for that. We have got a bunch of stuff we got to do. So I will get as many comments as I can. You may also notice I'm using a different laptop today, so this one's a little bit difficult to navigate here. But nonetheless, we will get a lot of that kind of stuff and get a lot of your comments here coming through as well. Joshua Lenhart always making fun of me for saying the "and on video." I don't quite know how that got started, but it is one of those things that I have gotten to where I say every single day. I don't quite know. And when I first started saying it, as we transitioned from the regular show to the comments, it was just I wasn't quite dragging it out and holding it over quite so long, but I guess it sort of evolved over time here. Gregory Glaves on YouTube says, and the YouTube comments are always so much easier to see, that Felipe Franks better not be the best quarterback out there when we play. Yeah, Gregory, I don't dispute that whatsoever. That now I believe that you can actually outplay Felipe Franks and still not give your team what it needs on Saturday. But as just a first baseline step, the duty for the Georgia quarterbacks, either one when they're in the game, is you got to be better than Felipe Franks, because Felipe Franks is no better than average. And if Georgia wants to be a legitimate playoff contender, it's got to have far better than average play from its quarterback. So out-dueling Felipe Franks at a baseline minimum is absolutely crucial for Georgia next week. I think you're 100% right about that. Brian McPhail says, so goes the line of scrimmage for Georgia, so goes the game. I don't disagree with Brian on that either, especially on the defensive side of the ball. As we mentioned during our regular broadcast, if Georgia can step up, whether it means playing Jordan Davis more, getting more out of some of these freshman linebackers, if it can step up and do better against the run against Florida, make the game be more about Felipe Franks, then not only is that a recipe for victory, it could be a recipe for an easy victory. The kind of thing where Georgia, the point spread's been about 7.5 points, at least in terms of a look-ahead line. That's the kind of thing that Georgia could cover that number easily, but you got to be better than that. You got to be better than that. The offensive line, for the most part, I think has been okay. Not great. Maybe great once Ben Cleveland comes back. But for now, it's been good enough. The defensive line has been below the Georgia standard here. But if it can find a way to bow its back against Florida, that could really be a recipe for victory. C. Hill on the subject of Louisiana, having parishes instead of counties is pretty cool. Yeah, I guess I've never quite understood what the difference between parishes and counties are, other than just the name of them. Houston Evans says we're going to Dos Gatos again this year. We were there last year for a really fun time. Kind of a cool bar scene with our friends from Dixie Vodka last year before the Georgia-Florida game. We hope to have some announcements coming up on that very early next week. We're still in the midst of planning a lot of that kind of stuff, but we're in the midst of trying to get all that together. BA's daddy on YouTube says, I'm in full Gator hate this week. Go Dogs and Daily. We certainly appreciate that, BAD. Chris Boyd says, when does Ben Cleveland come back? I think that's still up in the air, Chris, but it's not going to be the Florida game if I had to guess. Okay, so Shannon Burgess, one of our resident LSU fans who checks in from time to time, says that parishes and counties are basically the same with just different names. They sort of serve the same purpose. One thing that people outside the state of Georgia may not realize is that when it comes to counties, Georgia's got 1 million of them, like 159 counties. I think that Georgia's got by far the most counties of any state in the country, I think. Courtney Blackman says, can't wait to tailgate. Yeah, Courtney, you were right about that. One of the great things about Georgia, Florida is that great tailgate. And for a long time, Courtney, as you're very well aware, the tailgate was the only part that Georgia fans got to enjoy. Last year, though, was a Saturday in which the tailgate and the party after the game was even better than the one before the game. And I think that's something that Georgia fans are looking forward to enjoying some more again this year, too. Gerald Young Jr. says, every day is a great day to hate the Gators. Yeah, listen, we believe that. We believe that. Drew Roman says the next time Fields comes in, he needs to be able to throw. Yeah, I think that you're right about that. I mean, I continue to reiterate that if I was in charge last week, and there are plenty of reasons why I don't need to be in charge of the Georgia football program, but if I was in charge, I would have given Fields a chance to throw. And, Jeff said that maybe the scenario for the team going forward is that there are a couple series that we know, or that the Georgia players know before the game, are going to belong to Fields. Maybe the 4th, maybe the 7th, Jeff said. I mean, I'd be in favor of even more than that for Fields if the level of play dictates that. But one way or another, it's going to become difficult to evaluate who Fields is as a player if he's not getting more playing time. Now, as I said to start the show, I think there's a really good chance that Fromm plays better on Saturday. But even if Fromm plays better, which I assume he will, I still kind of want to see Fields play a little bit. This is not one of those all-or-nothing scenarios for me, where I want all of Fromm or all of Fields. I want them both to play well. But for those of you who say that Fields should have gotten a chance to throw a little bit last week, I continue to agree with that. I think part of what I've said in the past, this may have gotten misconstrued. When I talked a few weeks ago about Fields being Georgia's best running back, I tried to make it clear, and probably didn't make it clear enough. That doesn't mean that I didn't think he could throw the football. At the time, though, he was maybe the only guy that I thought could really move the chains with his legs. Remember, we weren't seeing a lot of DeAndre Swift at the time. Well, if Swift is healthy, he's shown now in some bursts that he can still be the guy we thought he was. And Elijah Holyfield may be emerging in a way that it didn't seem like he was doing a few weeks ago. So, Fields solely as a runner has never been the best choice for him. Obviously, when he comes in the game, you want him to feel free to run and throw. Not be afraid of injury when you run, not be afraid of a mistake when you throw. Just go out there and be the guy that you can be and let the chips fall where they may here. So I agree with you on some of that. I agree with many of you on all that. It's also getting time for us to go. Let me try to hit a couple more from YouTube before we get out of here. Jarrell Ortega says, BA, how can Fields learn how to throw the ball when all he does is run? And the only way he can get better is when they tell him to throw and not run. Yeah, Jarrell, I think you may have typed that comment before I just made the point that I made, but I think we're on the same page here. I wouldn't tell Fields not to do anything. I wouldn't tell him not to run because you're afraid you're going to get hurt. I wouldn't tell him not to throw because you're afraid you're going to throw a pick. I don't want quarterbacks being afraid. I just don't. If Fields or Fromm throws a pick, then let's put the defense on the field and let's get the football back. I want both these guys taking chances, right? I mean, all of us in whatever stage of life we're in, you didn't get there by never taking chances, right? You got to take some risks. You got to put yourself out there. I think quarterback plays much the same way. Let me get Enrique Murillo on this. He says that Fields does have the option to pass, but he doesn't. He gets RPOs and he reads what he can from the defense. Fields makes the call, but decides to hand it off or run. Yeah, Enrique, I won't pretend to know the full behind-the-scenes story when it comes to a lot of that kind of stuff. Gregory Glaive says, I've been so into the comments, it doesn't seem like it's been an hour already. Well, Gregory, I'm glad you're having a good time with the comments. You know, part of the issue with that is we've actually been stretching a little closer to an hour and a half on the program as of late, but I do got to get off the air on time here today. Dapper Dan brings up a good point, too. He says, why do people act like the only way to learn is by playing the game? We practice almost all year. And one thing about the way that Georgia practices, and make no mistake about it, I think it's the number one reason why Georgia became a playoff team a year ago is because of the intensity of the practices. They are like games. Now, we don't get to see what's going on there. Sometimes we may not get quite the full story about exactly how it all is playing out, but those Georgia practices are intense like games. I don't deny that. All right, this is the final comment of the week. Brian Kephart, this is a good one. He says, what does the average Florida student get on their SATs? Drool is the answer. That's funny stuff there from Brian. Good job. Good job. All right, I got to go. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate you making this a great week for DawgNation Daily. And next week we're going to be dead serious. Now, of course, we'll still have fun, but you get my point. This is a gigantic game for Georgia against the most bitter of rivals. Where else would you want to be than right here starting on Monday at 10 a.m.? Enjoy the weekend. Have a great time. But let's get ready for a knockdown, drag-out next Saturday starting Monday at 10 a.m. We'll talk to you then, everybody.